He walked into training camp this summer looking like a completely different man than the one who limped out of last season. And honestly, he should be limping. Because what this wide receiver went through in the last 12 months sounds less like a football injury report and more like a horror story. We're talking a hip drop tackle so brutal it didn't just hurt him in one place. It wrecked him in three. A high ankle sprain, a torn mackle, and a partially torn labrum in his hip, all at the same time, all on the same side of his body. If you don't know football, let me put that in terms you'll understand. That's the equivalent of getting into a car crash, breaking your ribs, blowing out your knee, and spraining your ankle, and then being asked to go back to work the next week smiling for the cameras like nothing happened. But here's the twist nobody was talking about. This isn't just a story about an injury. This is a story about a man who was quietly falling apart inside while the entire football world assumed he was just resting. Because when you're a professional athlete, there's an unspoken rule: you don't talk about the mental toll. You don't talk about the stress. You smile, you rehab, you show up, and you never ever let anyone see the cracks. Until now. In a raw and surprisingly honest conversation, this rising star finally opened up about just how dark things got. And when we say dark, we mean it. He admitted, in his own words, that the stress got so high at times that he couldn't always keep it from following him home. Anyone who has ever been injured, anyone who has ever felt like their own body betrayed them, knows exactly what that feels like. It's not just physical pain. It's the terrifying feeling of losing control over the one thing you've built your entire identity around. Let's break down exactly what happened, because the details are wild. It started with a hip drop tackle, one of the most controversial and dangerous tackling techniques in the modern game, the kind the league has been trying to legislate out of existence because of how many careers it has quietly destroyed. One violent, awkward collision. And suddenly this player's entire lower body was compromised. The injury report that followed was almost comedic in how vague it was. Some weeks it said ankle, other weeks it said knee. Fans on social media were confused, speculating, arguing about what was actually wrong with him. But now we know the truth. It was never just one thing. It was all three, tangled together in the cruelest way possible. Here's what makes this injury combination so uniquely brutal, and something casual fans might not realize. When you have a high ankle sprain, a torn McKell, and a labrum tear all on the same side of your body, you can't rehab any of them in isolation. Every single exercise designed to strengthen one injury risks aggravating another. Strengthening the hip stresses the knee. Stabilizing the ankle pulls on the hip. It's a vicious cycle. A rehab nightmare that most fans never get to see, happening behind closed doors in a training facility while the rest of us are debating fantasy football lineups. And through all of that, he admitted something remarkably human. Some days, he simply couldn't shake it off before walking through his own front door. The stress bled into his home life. Anyone who has ever brought a bad day home from work, anyone who has ever snapped at a loved one because their body or mind was screaming at them, understands that feeling of guilt. Now imagine doing that while millions of people are watching your every move, debating whether you're playing hurt or milking it, with zero idea what's actually happening beneath the surface. So how did he survive it? This is where the story turns from dark to genuinely inspiring. He didn't do it alone. He leaned hard on his locker room family, specifically calling out a veteran teammate at receiver, someone he described as a big presence with an incredibly light, positive energy. And honestly, that detail says everything about what it takes to survive a season like this. When your body is failing you day after day, you don't need someone who matches your gloom. You need someone who can pull you out of it. Someone who can walk into a dark room and instantly make it feel lighter. That's exactly what this teammate provided. And it clearly made all the difference. But it wasn't just teammates. He also credited a former receivers coach for showing up for him during the lowest points, along with the people who matter most, his family. And then there was the piece of this story that hit hardest: his faith. He didn't just mention it in passing. He called it out as one of the biggest things holding him together. Because when your own body has betrayed you in 3 different ways at once, you have to lean on something bigger than yourself, and for him, that something was his belief system. It's a refreshingly honest admission in a sports world that so often hides behind toughness and bravado. Now, here's the part of the story that turns this from just an injury update into something much bigger. While he was fighting through the darkest stretch of his career, his heart never left one place: Jamaica. This player is deeply proud of his heritage, and it's not some surface-level talking point he brings up for good press. He's actively working to change lives on the island, and the passion in his voice when he talks about it is unmistakable. He didn't hold back about what pulls him there again and again: the raw, untapped talent. He believes there are gifted young athletes across Jamaica who are simply being overlooked, kids with real potential who never get the exposure they deserve, especially in the aftermath of hurricane devastation that hit the island hard. He said something that should genuinely give you chills. If he could change just one life through his work there, that would be enough. Not headlines, not endorsement deals, one life. That's the bar he's set for himself. And he's not just talking about it, he's doing it. He partnered with a tackle football league on the island, bringing together talent from 7-on-7 leagues and flag football programs, giving these kids a taste of organized tackle football, likely for the first time in their lives. He's already hinting that this won't be a one-time thing. He wants to make these trips a routine part of his off-season, and he even teased that he's been in talks with another NFL star about some things in the works for Jamaica. He kept the details close to the vest, but if that partnership comes together, it could be a massive moment for football development on the island. Now let's shift gears, because while the injury and the heritage story tug at the heartstrings, football fans want to know one thing above all else: is he actually going to be good this season? And the answer, based on everything he's saying, is a resounding yes. He insists he feels as good physically as he's ever felt in his career. Let that sink in for a second. A guy who was dealing with 3 simultaneous injuries less than a year ago is now telling reporters he feels the best he ever has. That's either an incredible story of recovery or one of the gutsiest things an athlete has ever said to the media. Either way, it's must-watch television when the season kicks off. Part of that optimism comes from a major roster shakeup. A new veteran wide receiver addition has completely changed the energy in the locker room, and he didn't hesitate to praise the impact. According to him, the new addition doesn't just add talent to the field, it stretches opposing defenses in ways they weren't able to before, and more importantly, it's created a healthy internal competition that's pushing every single receiver in that room to elevate their game. Iron sharpens iron, and right now, that receiver room sounds like it's sharpening fast. With multiple receivers all playing well simultaneously, he predicts this group is going to cause serious problems for opposing defenses this season. Big talk, but after everything he's been through, who's going to bet against him? And then there's the mentorship angle, which adds another layer of depth to this story. At just 26 years old, this player is already being looked at as a veteran presence by the newest rookie in the receiver room. Think about that for a second. A guy who is still very much in his athletic prime is now the one fielding questions, the one being looked up to, the one setting the example. He didn't shy away from that responsibility either. He openly credited the veterans who mentored him early in his own career, admitting he was practically inseparable from one particular veteran leader during his first few seasons, soaking up everything he could. Now he's paying it forward, doing his best to answer every question the rookie throws his way, while also giving credit to other veteran leaders in the room for stepping up as mentors too. It's a beautiful full-circle moment in a career that, not too long ago, looked like it might be derailed entirely by injury. Finally, there's a completely different kind of challenge on the horizon this season, and it has nothing to do with injuries or contracts. It's about light. The team is stepping into a brand new stadium, and with a new stadium comes an entirely new set of physical variables that players have to adjust to on the fly. He explained in fascinating detail just how much something as simple as sunlight and stadium lighting can wreck a receiver's ability to track and catch a football. According to him, this challenge is almost exclusively a receiver problem. Quarterbacks, linemen, running backs, none of them have to squint into a blinding sky while trying to locate a spinning leather ball at the exact right moment. He compared it to trying to catch a pass in the rain, when water is hitting your eyes and blurring your vision at the worst possible moment. Except now it's sunlight or brand new stadium lights doing the same thing. It's a small, almost overlooked detail of professional football, but it's exactly the kind of behind-the-scenes insight that makes fans appreciate just how much these athletes have to process in a split second, all while running full speed and getting hit by defenders. His answer for how he's going to handle it? Simple. Trust the training, tune out the noise, and lock in on the football no matter what's happening in the background. It's honestly the same mindset that seems to have carried him through this entire journey, through the injuries, through the stress, through the doubt. Adjust and move on. Whether it's a hip-drop tackle that nearly wrecked his career or sunlight blinding him mid-route, his approach never really changes. So where does that leave us? A player who was fighting through 3 career-threatening injuries at once less than a year ago is now walking into a brand new stadium claiming to feel better than he ever has, mentoring the next generation in his own locker room, changing lives back home in Jamaica, and getting ready to be a key piece of what could be one of the most exciting receiver rooms in the league this season. If that's not a comeback story worth watching, we don't know what is. This is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under the noise of trade rumors and highlight reels, but it deserves to be heard. A man who was broken in 3 different ways, who admitted the stress got heavy enough to follow him home, who leaned on faith and family and his brothers in that locker room to pull himself back up. That's not just a sports story. That's a human story, and it's one worth telling. If this story moved you even a little bit, do us a favor. Smash that like button so more people can see it. Drop a comment down below telling us what you think his season is going to look like. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next big story we uncover. There's a lot more where this came from, and trust us, you don't want to miss it.